Welcome everyone to our studio and our next Photoshop tutorial. And as with all our tutorials, this is the opportunity to not just clarify and revise and extend your understanding and application of what you've been studying with us, but also for us to provide that additional and ongoing support for all of your creative endeavours. And this week our topics are in part an extension of last week's landscape tutorials, distinction between making images compared with finding and capturing images, but that in turn raises a parallel distinction, which is what I want to concentrate on today, between, let's just say for simplicity, the difference between pictorial literacy and Photoshop literacy. So let's look at those questions from our consultations and discussions this week, and in particular this first question. This came from a chance encounter exiting a lecture some nights ago in conjunction with this National Gallery of Australia touring exhibition that's currently resident here in Melbourne. Meeting by chance a friend, and the discussion that erupted resulted in this question. He was saying all these images in this touring exhibition were beautiful vintage silver gelatine prints. But listening to Gail's lecture, now remember Gail was the senior curator of international and Australian photography at the National Gallery of Australia for decades. And in her opening remarks, Gail referred to how to read an image. And my friend said it made him realise he had little to no idea how to decipher, let alone understand how Ansel Adams or Max Dupain actually made their prints. And he said, can you offer any insights for his non-analogue workflow? Because he was blown away by their presence. Noting that this exhibition is presented as part of the Bowness family's Foundation Photography Touring Program, Anne O'Hare, current curator of photography at the National Gallery, has put this together and has written in excess of 5,000 words in wall labels. So it's an incredible, absorbing experience, both in terms of the means of thinking about what we're doing, let alone the means of production. And the first question is very much about the means of production, encapsulated in Anne's exhibition title, In Search of Perfection. Now, my friend's interest in decoding the analogue effects of Dupain and Adams' prints, how these prints were made, to be able to, in Photoshop, create the impression those effects had on him, that sense of being before the announcement of its intellectual, social, cultural intent. So let's begin breaking this down. I've listed a small sampling of darkroom analog silver gelatine production controls, divided between the two phases of that print production, its exposure from the original black and white negative and its subsequent processing. There is a litany of other considerations I could include. Unsharp masking, depth development, and on it goes. But I don't include them because there's no evidence in either Dupain or Adams' vintage prints in this exhibition of any of those concerns. So I've highlighted a few distinctions based evidentially on what I see and understand in these prints, to then look at their equivalency in Photoshop for my friend. Okay, that's the setup. Let's have a look at this in practice. And remember, we're juxtaposing pictorial literacy, the understanding of images and how they function and work on us, emotionally, politically, socially, and otherwise, to induce all manner of other understanding. So to save time, I've already applied some Photoshop moves. Brightness and contrast and exposure. For example, our legacy brightness slider. And is this anything like what I see in the redistribution of brightness and contrast in these magnificent vintage prints? What about a one-stop increase in exposure? Our origin point is pegged and we are clipping those brightest highlights. This is getting confusing. If I change the exposure in my camera, I would expect my shadows, my midtones, and my highlights to all change together. This is not the N+1 nomenclature of Ansel Adams' zone system. And then we've got a lightness. But lightness is not brightness, and in this case belongs to our HSL color model. So none of this seems to appear or make sense relative to the redistribution of brightness in an Ansel Adams or a Max Dupain image. Now, all of these are simple sliders, so we need to dig a little deeper to understand what is really going on. And this is not just Photoshop literacy. It also translates into the understanding and application implied in the concept of pictorial literacy to achieve that effect on us that was so palpable in front of these magnificent and beautifully displayed vintage prints. Now, here's a simple analysis of brightness, lightness, and exposure in Photoshop to try and understand what these different tools do in their distribution of tone and if it is different to what was going on in the darkroom, and then how to do this in Photoshop. These grey horizontal bars are the sample points I placed on that step wedge. You can see the rate of change between somewhat evenly spaced intervals. On the other hand, maxed out brightness. This value has been elevated to there. This value has been elevated to there. This value has been elevated. It's not linear by any means. There's exposure. Black stays black. This value is raised to there. 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 It's more equitable, but still not mimicking what happens in our analog darkroom. Okay, here's a luminosity curve, the combined red, green and blue channels according to the luminosity formula Photoshop employs. If I blend this RGB curve on screen, that gives me a redistribution of the values in the image. I can just as easily mimic those values, blending on normal, and I'll sample those points, and re-plotting the values by measuring the readouts on these control patches so I can see their relationships. That's screening the image. It's neither linear, it's not exposure, and you can go through each of these tools. For example, as we adjust the lightness slider, that's what we're doing to the image. Or as we reduce lightness, we can understand in more pictorial detail what these simple sliders are doing to our image by also understanding their procedural difference. And that's why these interactive tools enabling us to work on our matrix in such profound ways starts to make me feel this is a lot more like what we were doing physically with our hands at the speed of a dripping tap in the analog darkroom. Of course, we can also apply to our full gamut images what we learn from these magnificent vintage prints. Now, here's a charming photograph from the same period that Adams and Dupain were at the height of their powers. It's a beautiful black and white image I've converted to RGB values because we also need to look at tinting and toning. And let's start with subtractive reduction. I'm using one of my light and blending modes to apply the effect to then be controlled by my curve and my localized luminosity and layer masking before and after. And now let's turn on that gestural masking. Before and after. Before and after. Subtractive reduction in the darkroom is removing a small amount of silver from the image, and the highlights already having very little silver are brightened to a much greater extent than the midtones or the shadows. And so often with brushes and wads of cotton wool, we applied these locally to the image. I turn it off and I turn it on. And look at where this chap is now sitting relative to this friend, relative to their engagement with the newspaper in front of them, before and after. I see stuff like this all over Adams' prints, not just the extreme versions like Moonrise over Hernandez, but is almost entirely absent from Dupain's silver gelatine vintage prints. Now, the engagement between these characters and what they're reading, it's three-dimensional, it's palpable, whereas the studio lighting and staging and mise-en-scene is already accomplished, but they are now more friends than anything else. Okay, what about intensification? And what about toning? And in particular, tinting. Now, these are effects very visible in both Dupain and Adams' images. in the case of Ansel Adams images, very purposeful, obviously applied meaningfully. In Dupain's, very hard to tell because the prints are in such poor archival condition. There's a lot of tinting and toning, but it's through the inappropriate or inadequate processing of those original prints, which were for commercial purposes. Here today, gone tomorrow. Thankfully, stored in cupboards long enough to be acquired by the National Gallery and now conserved and stabilised as much as can be in their already degraded condition. Remember, these are historical documents of great importance within our culture. So let's have a look at applying Adams' toning to the image and its subsequent intensification, off and on. Intensification of the shadows, but not the midtones and highlights, mimicking the effects of a diluted selenium toner on silver gelatine emulsions in the darkroom. There is a palpable increase in depth and dimensionality in these shadows, and this slight move to reddish rather than neutral blacks. Let's have a look at the red channel. No change in the shadows, no change in the midtones, a subtle change in the highlights, where we're removing red from the brightest pixels in our image, while selenium toning intensifying the image in our green channel by adding a hint of magenta, and in the blue channel adding blue to our shadows. No change to the midtones, no change to the highlights. That is all I had to do according to what I saw and understood in these magnificent Ansel Adams vintage silver gelatine prints. Tea toning, make a cup of tea for yourself, make a cup of tea for your print, steep your print in that tray filled with a cup of tea, and the golden hue would mordant itself to the gelatine. We became connoisseurs of different blends of teas that would give different hues in the tinting. But in Dupain's prints, the whites aren't white. They're heavily stained because it's a commercial print. They're not worrying about archival stability, no hypo-eliminator, and certainly inadequate washing. So, of course, they've sulfurated. They've toned themselves. Have a look at the brightest highlights to begin with. Off and on. Maximum effect in those brightest highlights, no effect in the midtones or selenium toned intensified shadow renderings, and increase in dimensionality they add to this presence. No T-toning, you can see the selenium split. T-toning. Remember the ABC of atmospheric perspective. Warm tones come forward, cool tones recede. And that's why the blacks are so much richer and deeper and blacker, not just because there's less light, but also their shift towards a cooler purple tone. Look at the highlights coming forward. And they did this either globally or locally, no longer in darkness, but in full light. And locally working with reducers and intensifiers and toning and tinting to turn that image into an exceptionally great print. Now, to finish off, it would be remiss to not look at this applied to a full gamut. Digital image. Remember I mentioned there were darkroom controls I saw no evidence of in the Adams or Dupain prints. Depth development, unsharp masking, and so on. And so let's add some of those effects into my image. Applying subtractive reduction and also proportional reduction. In this case, both of those effects are being applied globally. We haven't put the apron and protective gloves on and begun working locally on the image. Let's turn everything off and on. And you can see the enhanced sense of three-dimensionality. And what have I added here? Now, dodging and burning layers. It's in our Photoshop Master Class actions. I'm using the more relaxed soft light rate of change from shadows through midtones to highlights. Let's look at where I've chosen to dodge and burn, to darken and subtract distractions, to lighten and enhance the dance of light within the picture, sometimes applying to objects that are there, at other times drawing over the top of the image to add other gestures and other revelations. Oh, Ansel Adams prints are full of this. There's some of this in the Dupains, but nowhere near to the extent of what we see in the great works of Ansel Adams. Turn everything off and on. Further lifting, prioritizing certain gestures, flattening and cohering other gestures. And now, just as we were tinting and toning and intensifying the black and white image, we were also playing with the black and white images color composition. Not an oxymoron, because the tinting and the toning, let alone the development, conferred anything but neutrality in that black and white image. So here I'm enhancing the bluish, cyan, orangey, yellow separation in this color composition. Let's turn that on and off. And you can see not just the linear perspective of overlapping values and varying widths of projected shadows, but now through atmospheric perspective, pushing and pulling this into a canyon of possibilities and concerns. Turn everything off and everything on, everything off and everything on. And I'm keeping these examples purposefully subtle, simply because the deciphering of what we see in this beautiful exhibition of beautiful vintage silver gelatine prints is subtle but profound in their effect on us and our appreciation, let alone interpretation of what is before us. So hopefully there's a few hints and clues and translation from one history of photography to another history of photography, let alone understanding what it is that we bring to the table. And when things are in their prime condition, no matter what they are, we always have a banquet before us. Don't be strangers to the history of the medium that you adore, that has you studying with us, because there is treasure trove after treasure trove embedded in that history. But as much as we can see and interpret online, there's no substitute for being in the presence of, not Benjamin's aura, but the sense of the image impacting on us, its effect, before we start to conceptualize and theorize and decipher and decode. And it's for someone like me, let alone my friend the other night, this effect is palpable. As always, we wish you all the best in your adventures in photography, digital, analog, or otherwise, and look forward to the next encounter. Take care.